Okay, so today we're going to talk about evaluating algebraic expressions. This should be the next section in your notes. It's on a blue sheet of paper. What is an algebraic expression? It is an expression that contains one or more variables. To evaluate, first you substitute. That is not how you spell substitute. Substitute the variable with their given values, and then we follow the order of operations to simplify. When you're plugging these in, and you have done this on some basic level before, it may not have been with letters, but definitely you have done something where they said, the triangle is this many. If I have two triangles, how many do I have? So we've done this in a sense before, and you may have even done it with substituting in for a variable. It's really important, though, that when you're substituting it in, that you put whatever you're substituting in inside of a parentheses as you're putting it into your expression. The reason, for example, on number 1, if I just do 7 and then for x, I'm going to substitute in 4, if I just write a 4 like that, it doesn't look like it's supposed to be 7 times x. Now it looks like 74, and that's incorrect. So anytime you're substituting in for a variable, you need to put it inside of a parentheses. This helps eliminate the confusion of it being 74, but also it helps contain negatives with the numbers if you have them. So for our first one, this is 7 times x, and for x, I'm going to put in a 4, minus 2 times, and then for y, I'm going to substitute in a 3. Order of operations, we follow now to simplify. It tells me I need to do multiplication before I can do subtraction, and specifically, I need to do the multiplication that comes first in the problem, which is 7 times 4. 7 times 4 is 28. I'm going to bring down everything I haven't used, which is the minus 2 times 3. Order of operations following it again. I have to do multiplication before I can do subtraction. I know that 2 times 3 is 6, so now I have 28 minus 6, and 28 minus 6 is 22. Looking to number 2. This is a squared plus 2b, so same thing, we're going to substitute in our numbers for the variables that they're given, making sure that every time we substitute in, we put it inside of a parentheses. So for a, this is a squared, so I'm going to put a parentheses, and a is 4, so I'm going to do 4 squared. Excuse me. Plus 2 times b, and for b, I'm going to substitute in 5. Following our order of operations, I have to do exponents before I can do addition or multiplication. So exponent here, 4 squared, remember that is 4 times 4, and 4 times 4 is 16, plus bringing down what I have not used. Now, order of operations tells me to do multiplication before I do addition. 2 times 5 is 10, bringing down what I have not used. 16 plus 10 is 26. Now we're going to get into some more difficult problems. Notice this time when we're substituting, when we have some negatives that we're substituting in for our variables. For number 3, it says a negative 8 minus b in a parentheses plus 6 times c. When you're substituting in, remember, you need to substitute it in inside of a parentheses. And the reason is because if I don't, I might accidentally confuse this as my negative, and that is my subtraction. So it really should be a negative 8 minus, and then for b, it's a negative 5. So it's a negative 8 minus a negative 5 plus 6 times, and for c, I'm going to plug in a 2. Doing order of operations, I have to do what's inside of my parentheses first. This is negative 8 minus a negative 5. We do not subtract integers. We change it to adding the opposite. So now, working inside of my parentheses, I have a negative 8 plus a positive 5. Negative 8 plus a positive 5 is a negative 3. And I'm going to bring down everything I haven't used yet. Continuing with order of operations. 6 times 2. 6 times 2 is 12. Bringing down what I haven't used. So now I have a negative 3 plus 12. A negative 3 plus 12 gives me a positive 9. On number 4, this one is important. This negative in front of the m is really like having a negative 1 times m. And it's important that you remember that for this and for future lessons, the negative 1 in front of the m is implied. Substituting in, that's like a negative 1 times whatever m is. And for us, m is 6. Now I square it outside, and I do minus 2 times m, and once again, m is still 6, so I'm plugging it in. This is really important because if you were substituting in a negative variable, this is a chance that you might accidentally drop a negative if you're not putting it inside parentheses. So, order of operations for this one tells me I need to do what's inside of this parentheses first. A negative 1 times a positive 6 is a negative 6. And that's still in a parentheses, and I need to square it, bringing down everything I haven't used yet. Now, order of operations tells me I need to do my exponents first. Negative 6 squared, remember if you're punching this into your calculator, you need to make sure you're putting it inside of a parentheses. This is a negative 6 times a negative 6. And a negative 6 times a negative 6 is a positive 36. Bringing down everything that I haven't used yet, I have I have 36 minus 2 times 6. I need to do multiplication before I can do subtraction. 2 times 6 is 12, bringing down everything I haven't used. And 36 minus 12 is 24. All right. I would like you to do 5, 6, 7, and 8 on your own. So go ahead and pause the video. Work through the problems on your own, making sure that every time you're substituting something in, you're putting it inside of a parentheses. And then unpause the video after you've worked through it. Check your answers with what I have done. Now that you've had a chance to work on them, here we go. This is 1/2 times r plus s. So I'm going to substitute in what I know inside of parentheses. So I'm going to do r, which is 19, plus, and then I'm going to substitute in s, which is 7. All of that still is inside of the bigger parentheses. I'm going to simplify inside of my parentheses first. That is 19 plus 7. 19 plus 7 is 26. And now I need to multiply that by 1/2. 26 times 1/2 is 13. Number 6, substituting in everything and making sure you're putting it inside of a parentheses. This is 2 times x, and x is a negative 4, so I'm going to substitute in a negative 4, plus a negative 4 times y, and y is a negative 2. Order of operations tells me to do multiplication first, and we're going to move in order from left to right. So I'm going to do 2 times negative 4. 2 times a negative 4 is a negative 8, plus a negative 4 times a negative 2, because I haven't done that multiplication yet. Now continuing on, I'm going to do this multiplication. A negative 4 times a negative 2 is a positive 8. Bringing down what I haven't used, I have negative 8 plus positive 8 and a negative 8 plus a positive 8 is 0. Moving on to number 7. 2 times r to the third power plus r squared. This is 2 times r, which is 6, to the third power, plus r, which is 6, making sure you're putting it in a parentheses, squared. Now don't be fooled on this one. On this first section, we have multiplication and an exponent happening. And order of operations says I have to do the exponent first, which means I have to do 6 to the third power before I can multiply it by 2. 6 to the third power is 216, and I'm going to leave it in parentheses, and I'm going to bring down this 2 in the front because I have not yet multiplied by 2, bringing down plus 6 squared. Same as before, order of operations tells me that I need to do the exponent before I do the multiplication. So now I'm going to do 6 squared. 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36, bringing down everything that I have not used and following order of operations. Now I have multiplication and addition left. 2 times 216 is 432, bringing down the plus 36, and finally doing the addition. 432 plus 36 gives me 468. All right, now on to number 8. Same thing as the last one. You see that you have a multiplication with an exponent. So making sure that when you're doing this, that you're plugging everything in inside of a parentheses and following correct order of operations. Here we go. This is 3 times, I am plugging in a negative 4 for a, so a negative 4 squared, minus a, which is a negative 4, times b, which is a negative 3. Order of operations tells me to do my exponents first, so I'm just doing negative 4 squared first. Negative 4 squared is negative 4 times negative 4, which is a positive 16, bringing down everything I haven't used yet. And it is important to make sure you're showing all of your work. Now I have multiplication and subtraction. Multiplication comes first, and we move in order from left to right. So I need to do 3 times 16 first. 3 times 16 is 48, minus bringing down everything that I have not used. I still have multiplication, so I need to do this multiplication first. This is a negative 4 times a negative 3. And a negative 4 times a negative 3 is a positive 12, bringing down everything that I have not used, which is my subtraction sign and the 48. So now I am left with 48 minus 12, and 48 minus 12 is 36. The more meticulous you can be with showing all of your work, the better off you will be at not making simple calculation mistakes. Okay, go ahead and turn it over to the back now. Looking to the back, let's do a couple of these as together. So this first one says m divided by 2 multiplied by 2 times m minus 4. Substituting in for m is a negative 8. So every time I am substituting in, making sure to put it inside of a parentheses so that I can keep my negatives grouped, and so that I don't accidentally mistake it for something else. All right, so I have a negative 8 divided by 2 multiplied by 2 times the negative 8 minus 4. Order of operations tells me that I need to do what's inside of my parentheses first, and specifically inside of the parentheses, I need to do 2 times the negative 8 first. 2 times the negative 8 is a negative 16, bringing down everything that I have not used exactly as it was. Continuing to simplify inside of the parentheses, I need to do this, negative 16 minus 4. Remember, we don't subtract integers, we change it to adding the opposite. So this is really a negative 16 plus a negative 4. A negative 16 plus a negative 4 is a negative 20. Keep it inside of the parentheses and bring down the negative 8 divided by 2. Now this looks a little bit tricky, but this is really just division and multiplication. We need to do them in the correct order, moving from left to right. So because division comes first, I need to do a negative 8 divided by a positive 2 before I multiply anything. Negative 8 times a positive 2 gives me a negative 4, bringing down the times a negative 20 because I've not used that yet. And finally, a negative 4 times a negative 20, a negative times a negative is a positive, and 4 times 20 gives me 80. Looking to number 10. Same thing, making sure you're plugging in using parentheses inside. This is back to the order of operations problems. Remember, when you do them, you need to simplify all the way across the top and then simplify all the way across the bottom, and then you can divide them. So 4 times x, and x is 3, so I'm going to substitute in 3, times y, which is a negative 9. All of that is divided by 2 times x, which I'm substituting in 3 for. I'm going to split this off and do the top over here on the bottom, and then I will go back and I will do the bottom in a separate place as well. So for this one, order of operations says I need to multiply first. 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 times a negative 9 gives me a negative 108. So that is the top completely simplified. So a negative 108 over, and now I'm going to simplify the bottom. So for the bottom, it was 2 times 3. Order of operations, so I only have multiplication to do here. 2 times 3 is 6. So 6 goes back up here for the bottom. Now I have a negative 108 divided by 6. A negative divided by a positive means that my answer will be a negative, and 108 divided by 6 gives me 18. So it is a negative 18 when I simplify. All right, go ahead and try 11, 13, and 14 on your own. Pause the video, try them on your own. When you're finished, unpause the video and check your answers with what I have. All right, now that you've done those 3, let's go ahead and go over them. As you can kind of tell, the problems are getting more difficult as we go, with more things being substituted in, and they're working a lot with negatives. Again, the more meticulous you can be with showing all of your work and making sure that whatever you're substituting in, you're putting inside of a parentheses, is going to go a long way to keeping your stuff organized so that you get correct answers. So for number 11, negative 5 times a, which is 2, plus 2 times a, which is 2, times b, which is a negative 1, minus c, which is a negative 5. Okay, order of operations tells me that I need to do what's inside of my parentheses first. Specifically, out of everything that's happening in this parentheses, I need to do this multiplication first. So 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2. Making sure we bring down everything as it is that I have not used. Continuing to simplify in the parentheses, I now need to do this subtraction. This is negative 2 minus a negative 5. Remember, we do not subtract integers. We change it to adding the opposite. So this is a negative 2 plus 5. A negative 2 plus a positive 5 is 3. And bring down everything that we haven't used yet. Now I have 2 multiplication problems and addition. I'm going to do the multiplication before I do the addition in order from left to right, which means I need to do this multiplication first. A negative 5 times a positive 2 is a negative 10. Bring down everything I haven't used. Simplifying my next multiplication, 2 times 3 is 6. Bringing down everything I haven't used, I'm left with a negative 10 plus 6, and a negative 10 plus 6 is a negative 4. I can tell you now that if you are trying to skip steps on this, you are going to end up making a mistake, especially as we work into the harder problems. The next one you were supposed to do was 13. Substituting everything in, this is 8 times x squared. X is 2, so that is 2 squared times y, which is a negative 3, all over 4 times x, which is 2. The same thing as before, I'm going to go ahead and simplify the top first, and then I'll go back and simplify the bottom. Simplifying the top, I'm going to rewrite it. This is 8 times 2 squared times a negative 3. Order of operations tells me that I need to do my exponents first. So this is my exponent that I have to do first. 2 squared is 4. And I'm going to keep it in a parentheses and bring down everything that I have not used. Now I have 8 times 4 times a negative 3. I'm going to do the multiplication on this first. 8 times 4 gives me 32. And 32 times a negative 3 gives me a negative 96. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to put a negative 96 as the top of this fraction or this division problem. Now I'm going to go ahead and simplify the bottom. I'm rewriting it down here just so I can see my work. Luckily, this simplifies pretty quickly for me. 4 times 2, there's only one operation. 4 times 2 is 8. So 8 is what goes on the bottom. So this is now a negative 96 divided by a positive 8. And a negative 96 divided by 8 gives me a negative 12. The last one you were supposed to do was 14. This is 2/3 times 9 times a plus a times b. Substituting in everything, here we go. This is 2/3 times 9 times a, which is 5, plus a, which is 5, times b, which is a positive 3. Order of operations tells me to do what's in my parentheses first. So I see that I have 2 multiplication. I work in order from left to right. I'm going to do 9 times 5 first. 9 times 5 is 45 plus, and I'm going to bring down everything that I have not used. Continuing to work in that parentheses, I have 5 times 3, which is 15. So I now have 45 plus 15 left inside my parentheses, multiplied by 2/3 outside. Simplifying inside of the parentheses, I have 45 plus 15, which gives me 60. And then last but not least, I have 2/3 times 60. 2/3 times 60, when you multiply them, and you could absolutely use a calculator for this, 2/3 times 60 should give you a positive 40 as your solution for that one. Finally, we're going to just do a couple more together, especially with the fraction ones, because these ones are the ones that people tend to miss the most. So we're just going to do them together right now. On for number 15, substituting in, I have a negative 2 times a, which is 8, times b, which is a -4, all over a plus b. So substituting it in, a is 8 plus b, which is a -4. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite these and simplify the top first and then simplify the bottom. Simplifying the top, I have -2 times 8 times a -4. I'm going to do a -2 times 8 first. -2 times a +8 is a -16, bringing down the multiplying by -4, which I have not done yet. I now have a -16 times a -4. A -16 times a -4 leaves me with a +64. So that is what goes on the top of my fraction or my division. Simplifying the bottom, this is 8 plus a -4. You can do this on your calculator, but you can also do this hopefully in your head at this point. 8 plus a -4 is a +4. So now I have 64 over 4, which is just 64 divided by 4. And 64 divided by 4 leaves me with 16. Moving over, we're going to do number 16 together. This one is important. This one and one other problem in your homework assignment will end up as a fraction, or you could even say a decimal. But ladies and gentlemen, there's only one that has that. Every other problem in your homework assignment should end up as an integer, which is a positive or a negative whole number, except for one of them. Okay, for this one, substituting in what we know. I have 18 times x, x is 4, over x, which is 4, times y, which is a -2, squared. I'm sure you're getting tired of me saying this, but remember, you should always be substituting everything in inside of a parentheses. I'm going to simplify the top first. I'm going to rewrite it down here. 18 times 4 is my top. 18 times 4 is 72. So the top of my division or my fraction is 72. Now I'm going to rewrite the bottom and simplify the bottom. Order of operations tells me that I need to do the exponent before I can do the multiplication. Remember, this is a -2 squared. A -2 times a -2 is a +4. That, after bringing down everything that I haven't used yet, that leaves me with a +4 times a +4. And a +4 times a +4 is 16. So now I have 72 over 16. Unfortunately, this does not divide nicely. So you need to reduce it. And if I were you, I would probably be leaving it as an improper fraction. Or you could actually go ahead and divide it out and give it to me as a decimal. Either answer would be acceptable. If you are reducing this, 72 and 16 are both divisible by 8. 72 divided by 8 leaves me with 9, and 16 divided by 2 leaves me with, 16 divided by 8 leaves me with 2. So I could leave it as 9 over 2 as an improper fraction. Or if you just did this division in your calculator, which would also be acceptable, 9 divided by 2 or even 72 divided by 16 would leave you with 4.5 or 4 5/10, both of which would be perfectly fine answers. All right, now that you've finished your notes, go ahead and show them to the sub so that you can get your assignment for today. You're doing all 10 problems on your assignment, and remember, one of them will end up as a fraction or a decimal, whichever way you would like to look at it. Everything else should give you an integer.